Welcome to the second day of the regional conference organized by the OSCE, Safeguarding Media Freedom to Protect Democracy at a Crossroads. First, a housekeeping rule for those who need translation. Please get your devices. English is for 0, and the Russian translation is for C. Yes, you have on the back device. Well, and anyway, if you need help, especially those who need their devices to be tuned in for English translation, you can always just approach the technical team. Okay, so my name is Liliana Vitsu. I come from Moldova, but I am not new to the region. I used to work here for Internews, and I also have some professional experience with Tajikistan and Uzbekistan, and I'm quite happy to be today, and especially to moderate a session dedicated to a very important theme. It's about media self-regulation. And media self-regulation is very important in countries who are building democracies, because it's about building and ensuring a good quality of journalism. It's also about maintaining public trust in media. It also provides alternative to media disputes, but probably more important, it's a way to keep authorities out of media affairs, right? Rather than have them interfere, it's better for the media industry to regulate itself. And today we have distinguished guests, panelists who contributed to establishing this self-regulation mechanism in their respective countries. We will hear examples from Mongolia, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Kazakhstan. And I'm very happy that we have here today double reason to celebrate. So we celebrate cooperation, we will celebrate the development of this self-regulation mechanism, but also we are celebrating one of the participants in this panel. So Alia, happy birthday to you. Well, I think OSCE couldn't have thought of a better way to organize for you a birthday party. So a prosperous life to you, and a professional career that changes things in your country. This is what I think we would all want to wish you today.
Thank you, Liliana, and thank you. I want to thank OSCE for inviting us.
Okay, and because we have only 1 hour for this session, and because we want to keep exploring the various experiences, I would like to give the floor and to introduce Gun Jidma Gongonor. She's the executive director of the Media Council in Mongolia. She's the person who pioneered, as I said, we have here today people who pioneered this mechanism in their country. So you work for the Mongolian Press Institute and coordinated over 100 of researches and training courses to basically support independent journalism in your country. But most important, you contributed to establishing the Media Council of Mongolia. So I'd like to invite you to take the floor and to share the experiences, but please keep within 5 to 6 minutes maximum, because we then want to still have a discussion and take questions from our guests. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much to being here with this great conference. Today I'm talking about in the Mongolian Media Council. It is existence and acceptance and credibility and sustainability. In Mongolia, slide please, move, next. In Mongolia, more than 500 media outlets are operating currently. 130 are TV stations and several hundred are small online news sites. All these media outlets compete for the small market, over 3.3 million people. In such market, the majority of media outlets only exist of direct support businesses and political affiliations of media owners. In Mongolia, media freedom law adopted in 1998 prohibits government from passing any laws restricting media freedom, owning mass media, and censoring public information content. But there are political attempts to tighten the laws regarding the media freedom of speech and to increase government control of the media. The country is ranked 19th of 180 countries in the World Press Freedom Index this year. The MCM, next slides, please show, next one. It's about the existence of Media Council of Mongolia. Hereafter, I'll use short version as MCM. The MCM was established successfully after a series of preparation meetings of local journalists and media organizations which wanted to create media self-regulatory body. They initiated to set up the Mongolia Media Council Club, met every Wednesday almost a year. They discussed the needs for self-regulation mechanism for the media sector, plan to set up process, organizational structure and procedures, discuss each articles of code of conduct, as well as learning international experience such as German Press Council in Bosnia and Herzegovina, so on. As a result, consultation and consensus, we created own independent structure that equal number of quotas from media owners and journalists and professional representatives of such as media lawyers and journalism trainers and civic activists. Next. Our main mandate is to receive complaints from individual citizens and legal entities concerning the Mongolian media ethics principles, which is code of conduct. Up until now, we have received a total of 522 complaints. Most of the cases were discussed and resolved by our MCM's ethics committees sessions. MCM has 45 volunteer members, and of which 30 members are divided to separate ethics committees. One is print and online ethics committee, another is broadcast ethics committee. Those committee sessions take place at least once a quarter with no less than 60% of all attendance. Committee's members are well experienced in journalism, recognized in media industry. The committee sessions make a decision whether professional journalism standards is breached or not based on analysis, discussions, and debate about journalism work. After the discussion, ethics committee's conclusions is published on our website, also in social pages, and other media organizations publish our decisions. As you can see this graph, 70% addressed to online news sites, 18% to TV stations. The half of complaints by ordinary citizens, then followed by politicians, government employees, and public servants and business organizations. Next slide is about acceptance of the Media Council. Acceptance by the media sector was a huge challenge for us. In order to accept it by media sector, we conducted capacity building trainings many times for the committee members and kept editorial meetings, workshops with journalists and editors on quality of journalism for once every week. The first independent impact research Media Council by international experts implemented in March of this year, and covering 100 journalists. The report mentioned that the MCM is well known and accepted by media sector. No less than 82% of the survey respondents agreed with following statements. The Media Council has contributed to developing good ethical standards for journalism. Another slide is about in our sum of photo. Journalism Ethics Forum held every year, and more than 100 journalists and actors attended this forum. Media ethics in times of COVID pandemic, journalism values in the media trust, media legal regulation and self-regulation were the topic of forums. MCM is not accepted by Mongolian media sector, but also accepted internationally. For example, pillars of democracy, sustaining media self-regulation in Mongolia roundtable discussion was held in Belgium last December. Also, MCM is an associated member of Alliance of Independent Press Councils in Europe. Next slide is about common ethics violations. There are over 400 code of conducts around the world. Mongolian media ethics principles are 10 general articles, 33 sub-articles. It is covering all aspects of journalism, some of them very short, some of them very long. But all of them really focused on 5 key values for journalism. First is accuracy, independence, impartiality, humanity, and accountability. According to the conclusion of the Ethics Committee, media newsrooms are mainly violated the following articles Code of Conduct. Information accuracy is not verified, information source not confirmed, the rumors and assumptions were published. Last slide about media council sustainability. Financial sustainability is key challenge for MCM. While board members and ethics committee members are all volunteers, working for the MCM without any salaries, it is really important contribution to strengthening of media self-regulation in Mongolia. However, the council still needs to pay secretary salaries, training expenses, and other running costs. A major part of these expenses is currently covered by the international support organizations such as Deutsche Welle Academy and UNDP, etc. Our current funding is from the two main sources. One is from the media houses, 10%. Second one is international cooperation project funding is 90%.
1 more minute.
According to our research, contributions from the media sectors are hard to collect due to their own financial struggles. Consequently, the MCM is exploring options for additional fundings. Crowdfunding can be one option. So we plan to invite you for the fundraising regular citizens who want media freedom. Under this call, MCM is going to set up the independent fund. Another option is probably public funding as seen in several other countries, but this option brings some critical voices against media self-regulation. Because Mongolians are aware of the taxpayer fundings, because it will be automatically lead to government control. I really hope that all of those efforts and discussions will bring a sustainable development of the MCM in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, and I'm very happy to have today with us Karim Bahriev from Uzbekistan, who is not only the head of the Union of Journalists of Uzbekistan, but it's a key figure, let's say, when it comes to the media in Uzbekistan, as somebody who founded the first independent newspaper and worked with the Internews office in Kyrgyzstan, in Uzbekistan, and is a leading media expert. So I'd like to invite you to share your thoughts about the self-regulation mechanism and maybe why is not yet like institutionalized as it is in the other countries represented today in the panel. Thank you.
Greetings, dear guests and participants, ladies and gentlemen, or the other way around. I don't have a presentation because I'm an old school person, and I feel when there's a presentation, people don't really listen to me. They're watching pictures. The history of ethical codes of Uzbekistan. So these ethnic codes, they started talking about them during perestroika times in the 80s, because journalists started to write at the glasnost time the truth, and some people were criticized, and they've got some judiciary issues and ethical issues, and then Birjova Vestnik Vostoka, a newspaper, a couple of editorial houses, they got their own ethical codes. During the independence time, they've had several projects of ethic codes, and they were discussed in different assemblies, but for 29 years they were not accepted for some reason. And you know, we are we're dividing the history of Uzbekistan into periods. The old one and new Uzbekistan. Our president is saying it's like an empire of fear, which what we've had before. The today's dignity is that we became open and we're not afraid anymore. So in this time around people like journalists, they're writing critical articles. So this glossness or this freedom of speech is related to the emergence of internet or World Wide Web, which is not always being under control of the authorities or being blocked. Therefore, we got some issues with the law or of ethical type. So this National Organization of Electronic Mass Media also adopted their code of ethics, and they've had it for decades. I don't know how effective it was, but the first code of ethics of Uzbekistan was accepted on 17th of July on the fourth conference of Journalists Union in 2019 in Uzbekistan. That was the first code related to the journalists of Uzbekistan, and in this code, it is beautiful just as any other code, but there are some norms, political kind, and the journalist, as it says in the code, should respect and protect the national interests, independence, sovereignty, national values, to serve to the internal political stability, peace, and prosperity, interconfessional, international, interethnic. This is kind of a big deal, big words. The freedom of speech is really dependent on the fact that journalists supposed to criticize or raise up some painful issues which may not serve this very political stability. So talking about that, the journalist is supposed to be responsible and be always telling the truth. In my opinion, a journalist is supposed to have a certain type of not being objective, because they may not know the whole thing. Like we've been talking for 2 days about hate speech and to respect the honor and dignity of people, but we need to divide the facts from the opinions. So if the journalist is always required to be always objective and only write truth and nothing but the truth, journalists are supposed to have a certain right. I mean, if there's any kind of criminal proceedings like for the slander, it's in the facts sometimes where there are some political problems. Political opposition is expressing their opinion. Different experts there, you can't require from them to be objective or to be always truthful. Or there are some programs or theories, political parties programs to revise them or to shut their mouth because this is supposedly is not objective. We can't do that because there should be in the country some field to think. The freedom of thought requires for people to make mistakes, and not always a mistake supposed to be suppressed, right? So in principle, Uzbek code or all codes, as far as I know, are started with the fact that journalists are supposed to uh, pass on the reliable information, so the people are supposed to be able to know everything, and it's supposed to be a full truth. So it's a requirement of the law and of our code as well. Recently, there was a referendum. During the pre-referendum discussion upon the outcomes of the referendum, there was 19 million, let's say, bulletins printed, and to the voting polls came 16 million. So 3 million didn't show up at all. So from the ones that came over, 90% voted for, 10% against. This is 1.5 million people. So 4.5 million people, they thought either this referendum is not needed or they voted against. But when you watch this pre-discussions of this referendum, not in a single video or TV or radio broadcast, there was no against votes. Like these people were not heard. So this is a big ethical issue. And the second ethical issue is related with the gifts or gratitude. So the Uzbek journalists, there's some good laws about officials. They're not supposed to receive any gratitude or gifts above $100 per gift. So, but journalists, they have a day of journalists every year, and they provide some premiums to the journalists, giving them the laptop computers. Nowadays, you can even get a vehicle, a car. For journalists, that's a great deal. But when I'm tracing this, let's say if there's a Voice of America reporter, she was given a laptop, so she denied taking it, and then she passed it over to the Institute of the World Languages. Yeah, I got one more minute. I was going to say many more other things, but about our main issue in Uzbekistan, I'd like to say there's a code, and there are some ethical issues. Yesterday, Ilham Abdullah said we've got some problems, and we know them, including in this area which needed to be resolved. But as for what needs to be done, there's a foundation for support of mass media. When Ramzanov became ahead of that, they made a proposal to make a media ombudsman. In Uzbekistan, there's a main ombudsman, and then there's a child ombudsman, and there's a business ombudsman that are dealing with the business-related issues. So it would be nice to have a media ombudsman that would be able to resolve the journalist issues. And so the people who are complaining against mass media, they go to the courts, but the self-regulation system is not really engaged, including in this council, which I'm head of. Not a single person came to a journalist to complain over these years. Sometimes we make some statements against arrest journalists. So, and we make a statement before the fact that it needs to be taken into consideration according to the law. So, in Uzbekistan, this activity needs to be developed and supported because it does not have a building of its own. They don't have a salary. This is purely on the on like a voluntary basis. So I would say at the end of my speech, these councils on regulation or the boards, they're supposed to be cooperated or cooperating there has to be some international cooperation. We're supposed to learn of the experience of other colleagues in Central Asia or the entire world of the OSCE. So all of that needs to be discussed and cooperated jointly. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. About the cooperation, we'll have some positive announcements.
In this cooperation area. Now I'd like to offer the floor to a fierce advocate of human rights and media freedoms in Kyrgyzstan. It's Nurgul Abdukerimova from the Media Development Center. She was instrumental in establishing the Media Complaint Commission in Kyrgyzstan, which serves as a self-regulatory body, and she played a direct role with writing and implementing the Code of Ethics. So Nurgul Abdukerimova, please share your experience with us. Thank you.
Спасибо большое. Добрый день, уважаемые.
Thank you very much. Hello, dear participants. I am glad to. For the second day, we've been discussing very important issues of freedom of media, and one of the bodies, entities that affects the freedom of media is self-regulation body in Kyrgyzstan. Such a entity body for self-regulation was established in 2007. And we conducted the first, at that time, the Congress of Journalists, where we adopted the ethical code and a commission for disputes reviews was established against the media. Before our body was established, a lot of work has been done. We studied the international experience and conducted various working groups and roundtables with international experts and journalists in the area of self-regulation. And as a result of this, in 2007, our commission for reviews of complaints against media was established by the journalists, where 120 delegates participated in that Congress from the media and the media organizations, where they signed an ethical code to observe the ethical code. And according to the regulation of the commission at this time, the commission consists of 13 people on 2 quotas, under the quota for journalists, for public figures and public unions. And each 3 years, according to the Commission's regulation, we are supposed to have a conference or Congress of the Republican Congress by inviting journalists, media organization representatives, where the members of the Commission they report about their work, and where the members of the Commission can be elected or re-elected into the new Commission. At these meetings, they also discuss important issues, both such as changes or amendments to the ethical code. But before all these activities, we conduct the work with journalists, where we suggest to make changes, our amendments to our code of ethics, where we can at the general meeting discuss them and adopt one general document. The advantage and importance of the Commission is to protect the rights of the users, consumers, readers, and listeners, audiences. The Commission reviews complaints against media, both physical and legal entities, and it ensures such a mechanism of protection of the public and individual in certain individuals. Also, the Commission reviews standards, complaints on ethical norms, which is the cornerstone and the main document in reviewing complaints, which improves the responsibility, accountability of the journalist to the society, to the public before publishing a material. Also, an important point is the Commission allows for conflict resolution without involvement of judges, courts. I think it's an effective mechanism for conflict dispute between media and information users, consumers, which first helps avoid lengthy court cases, adjudications with minimal physical costs, financial costs, practically without any costs. And within expedited timelines, the commission looks into the complaints that have arrived. So the complaints are reviewed in such a way that we invite both sides for the review, so to make everything transparent and to avoid certain points where so that the complainer would feel the responsibility. So that the committee is working in a quite an open, transparent way and makes its decision. We have there is a slide. We have 3 forms of resolutions. But before you find, the commission also conducts yes, 3 forms of these resolutions, which is a warning, and if the journalist made some insignificant mistakes in the materials or publication, it's also a statement when there is a violation from the media and journalists from the media, and another form, it's the statement of a public reprimand. All our resolutions and complaints are openly published on our organization's website. Our organization, from the moment of establishing, since it's established, it continues it's providing its technical support to the commission, because as the commission, as you understand, all self-regulation bodies are public platforms, and we also help raise funds for activities, for the commission activities. As I said, the educational part is an important part of the commission work, where we need to promote ethical norms among students. So also our complaints are sent to the school universities where they train journalists, so that the future journalists would see cases, and so also avoid such violations in future. It's also a good example, and the members of the commission previously conducted master classes in the universities and the journalism departments. I also would like to mention that with the support of the OSCE, we have published manuals for students of the journalism departments, professional ethics of journalists, which is the previous makeup composition. The representatives of the previous makeup prepared two manuals, guidelines that are still used in the universities, and I'd like to call on to the international organizations to support self-regulation bodies, which are as public platforms, maybe with some financial educational part, which is important, because to educate and to help our future journalists is an important thing, because in the universities they have theory, and it's desirable to have for the future journalists to be prepared to his or her professions and improve professional level in future. So I also would like to mention that as of today, the importance of the Complaints Review Commission as a platform for adjudication, it has increased manifold, because we are able to engage to review before court in shortest time without financial costs incurred, and to resolve the conflict in a peaceful manner. We call all the informational disputes in a civilized manner, because self-regulation bodies, they provide alternatives to state controls over the media community. Also, the self-regulation bodies allow the journalists themselves to regulate their conduct, to improve their professional level, and so on. And this helps preserve independence of the media, helps prevent censorship and the intervention from the government. Also The self-regulation body also helps to fight with misinformation and fakes and so on. And I think all these initiatives that are today taking place in the country, these are such a pressure that's going on not only on the media but on journalists, but on the entire civil society. And as the OSCE representative Teresa Ribeiro has mentioned, the situation with freedom of media is decreasing, is worsening all over Central Asia. Contradictory laws are being adopted, and pressure is being exerted on the journalists and the media, and journalists are being persecuted. And our government has to revise its perspective on the freedom of media, and not to pressure, not to introduce censorship. We've been talking about it for a long time. Such a self-regulation bodies, such as in Mongolia, since 2007-5, or in 2007, it allows to provide alternative ways of self-regulation. Thank you. Thank you very much, Nurgul.
Alia shares basically a similar experience to Nurgul. She also contributed to promoting the code of ethics in Kazakhstan, and she co-founded the Kazakhstan Media Network that basically works to promote journalistic standards, ethical norms, and the mechanism of self-regulation. So please share your experience with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Liliana. So during the pandemic in Kazakhstan, there was that was followed by the infodemic. There was a decline in public trust in media. That's why in 2020, the initiative group consisting of the late Mikhail Dorofeev from Informbureau and other media trainers and experts as Baktagul Burbaeva, Julduz Abdullah, who are now in this room with us, they revised an old code of ethics of journalists that existed in Kazakhstan from 2012, and came up with a new document called Basic Principles of Media in Kazakhstan. We also received big support from the late Manana Slomazyan in Internews. She inspired us by her example and attracted many experts for them to share their knowledge. So after we finished work on this document, we understood we need a self-regulatory body. And in 2022, a self-regulation committee was created. And in 2 years of work, they examined 30 cases, and most of them concerned the violations such as victim blaming, use of images of victims of violence, use of clickbait headlines, or dissemination of disinformation in general. As from our side, from the side of public organization, we conducted numerous training pieces throughout Kazakhstan and even reached the point of 40,000 kilometers. That's basically a length of Earth's equator. Also, for the challenges we encountered, Ministry of Information and Social Development tried creating own self-regulation body and tried incorporating laws regarding self-regulation bodies. And also Baktagul once a year receive calls asking when you will close your organization. So as you could have concluded yourselves, media self-regulation in Kazakhstan is at its early stage of development, and I think it's important for all of the bodies, self-regulation bodies in Central Asia to cooperate. That's why I'm happy and honored to announce that after this session, we're planning to sign a memorandum on creation of Central Asian Network, Central Asian Media Network for self-regulation. So please stay tuned.
This is the good news we had for you, the fact that today on the margins of this conference, the 4 countries will be creating a memorandum, will be signing. As you can see, it's already, the table is already prepared for a memorandum of cooperation to promote self-regulation mechanism in Central Asia. Before I turn to you for questions, I'd like to have some brief follow-up, but please just be very short, 1 minute if you can, because we've already passed half of the time allocated. Guntudma, you mentioned that for you the main challenge was to get public trust, to get the public to trust your institution. And this is very important, because if you want people to complain, to send complaints, if you want people to get engaged, I mean, like consumers of information, you really need them to trust that your decisions will matter, to trust that the media institutions will respect your decisions, right? That media institutions will change their behavior after you rule in a certain way. So what do you do as an institution to, I don't know, create this bond, to force, to increase the participation of the public and to increase the trust in your institution?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's because it's acceptance of media councils by us, media sector and also in the public. It's very important because media councils' first priority was in acceptance by media sector, and during last 8 years. Now we need to change this priority because we need to improve our public's awareness. Because our board of directors also planning to change on our strategic planning in the becoming 3 years. It's acceptance of public and also in the need to improve their knowledge on the importance of media self-regulation, also on how to file a complaint to media council. Those knowledge should be improved because we need to public awareness for public in the coming 3 years. We already set up these goals and strategical plan on our strategical plan. Thank you.
Alia, yesterday and today we've been discussing a lot about the risks or the challenges coming from the new media, from bloggers, vloggers, and online activity, which is not regulated at all. I mean, on one hand, TV and radio or the mainstream media, they at least have some code of conducts, right? So how do you see accommodating the two? Because on one hand, we have this emerging new media, which is not regulated at all. On the other hand, you kind of like, and we all see that the mainstream media goes na второй план, goes somehow in the back. But isn't it precisely that the mainstream media should be the main partner for the self-regulation?
You're absolutely right. It's their advantage. And I want to give here example of invisible hand that was introduced by Adam Smith. When he introduced that idea, he talked about companies' duties to educate their consumers by producing high standard products. So I want to correlate that idea with what we have now and say that only by providing high standard quality materials, traditional media, and not only traditional media, because right now not only them produce informative materials, new media, and basically anyone who has an ability to create content can gain from following media ethics standards. That's
Nurgul, to get back to what you were mentioning, you were speaking about the advantages of the self-regulation, that, and first and the most important, that authoritarian regimes should stay away from it. I mean, basically, it's keeping the state away, yeah. And this is what I also liked about your presentation, and I also mentioned in the beginning of in the opening of our panel. So, from the various roles of the complaints committee, to educate journalists, to ensure good journalism, to ensure that people get a chance to react. Which role did you see most successful, and which role do you still think that should be developed? And maybe you could give an example of the, I don't know, harshest decisions, of the harshest case, the most serious case you had to deal with.
Ну, вообще, роль органов...
Well, the role of self-regulating agency is the viewing of the complaints, not to get to the court. So the main task of the self-regulation agency of our commission is to see informational disputes and to become like a bridge between the users of information and the mass media. So that is the main task. And what would I like to I would like to continue the commission's activity. There are some main tasks like viewing of the complaints by the peaceful means without getting into the court. And we're also challenging all the information users to use this platform, and to the state as well, because we've had multiple meetings with the parliament, with consumers of information. We would bring it to them that this agency is important for them first of all, and for the journalists. Right now we need to continue this informational promotion to this current composition, and educational part also should not be forgotten, because increase of media awareness is the main task amongst the youth, and increase of critical thinking and so forth. So also we should continue working with the journalists, with the mass media, including talking about the complaints that were viewed by our commission during the entire activity. Per year in commission we have more than 10 complaints. The most difficult one was, actually all of them are in their own right, because you have to find the principles and the standards that were violated in different materials, whether it's a video material or a press release. So really most of the complaints are against some printed media. Nowadays there's less of a printed media because everybody goes to the online platforms, and mainly they're complaining against TV channels, KTRK, LTR. So that's a state media which is broadcasting pro state materials and so forth. So one of the latest materials that we've had, the channel that showed a video about this private entrepreneur, where they took a video from another source, and so they copy pasted. So they have complained, the source complained against the journalists of this channel, but as a result we reconciled both of the sides, and they admitted that was their just advertisement move, PR move. Also we've had some complaints on plagiarism. We've seen some journalists that were copycatting others' material. So many things are not under the competence of the commission, so we send them to relevant agencies, or the user can go directly to the court if it's not part of the commission's competence. While viewing these complaints, we see if it's part of our competence or not, because we are not able to view those that are not part of our agency. Thanks a lot. And the latest question for Mr. Karimova Bakhriyev about Uzbekistan.
During the referendum, people didn't get a chance to get informed properly. The spread of fakes, of disinformation in Telegram, especially in social media, was observed. So isn't this precisely the case for you to come together and to institutionalize and create, I don't know, a media council, a self-regulatory body of Uzbekistan? Why don't you create this as part of the Union of Journalists or under the union, or maybe the Union of Journalists can be the secretariat of this union? So why are your country still so late in institutionalizing such an institution, an organization? Thank you.
Yeah, as I said, in principle, I wasn't really studying what that was the case, but a year ago we've had a presidential election. Now it's a referendum, another presidential election maybe. There's like a fatigue amongst the public because they would go back to back. But on the TV and the newspapers, there were some concerts and some artists or performers and some big shots would say, hey, during the previous regime of Karim was really bad and somebody was arrested before and somebody was tortured, and after referendum, after the New York Constitution, we are not going to have any of these interrogations and torture. So there would be always the calls. You need to vote at the referendum. I'm just stating the fact, and everybody's aware of this, and you can check that. There was not a single voice against on the TV, on the radio, anywhere. So that's what I was talking about. The second part, why is it taking so long? I don't think it's the correct way of asking, because since 2019, this media ombudsman question was raised. Sometimes they raise it, sometimes they hush it down. It's not being adopted. But as for the self-regulation agencies, like yesterday, they were talking about that at home. Abdullayev said there's like a public council under the parliament. So there are some public activists or representatives of civil society, possibly, I don't know. I do watch the information. How many times do they gather and what do they discuss? So that's supposed to be the theme of discussion, because Uzbek journalists, except for the issues with the law, and there are some ethical issues that they are facing. So in the next week there will be some courts against journalists, some judiciary proceedings that found some compromising materials. And because of the presumption of innocent, I cannot say that they are guilty of this, but it's already been given to the court, and they've had racketing or what they call money extortion up to 5 billion Uzbek som. So these are the facts, and those signals and other issues, including the problems of the ethics, they need to be discussed not only in the legislative part, but also under some other councils of the parliament. There's a foundation of development and protection of journalism and mass media. There's a foundation. It's also called Mass Media Protection Foundation, and we also have a council under the journalist union. So I think those commissions' activity needs to be gaining the revs. We have to gather them together. We have to promote this idea of media ombudsman, because there's a children's ombudsman, business community businessman. Why can't we do a similar for these type of disputes, like they've had in Russia, judiciary chamber under this public organization. So I've read 3 volumes of their decisions of that chamber. So people came up to them, not to the courts, not to the prosecutor's office. They tried not to prosecute the journalists first, but went to this council and they resolved these issues there. And as Norgo said, pre-court decision. This is good for journalists and for the officials and for the public if it's going to be pre-court self-regulating of the journalists. Thanks a lot. We have 10 more minutes.
Yes, please, Uzbekistan first, sorry.
Да, у меня
Yeah, I got an opinion. I would like to voice my position about. You guys can hear me, right? So in the Republic of Uzbekistan, directly for the regulation of in the mass media, there's also a law of protection of professional activity of journalists. So these questions that are being discussed, self-regulation laws, we were working since 2016 to 2018 in a very close attention. As a result, we got the amendments of these 2 laws. So nowadays, the committee, we are watching this law application practice to have some substantiated recommendations to make another step. In 2018, when upon the initiative of the MPs, they have adopted the changes in these 2 laws for the self-regulation. It was done in the following way. Into the law, they added a separate article. What is a code of professional ethics? There was a definition given, which is a set of rules that identifies their behavior and conduct. And there was also a right given to the journalists and to these unions to adopt these rules. So into the responsibilities of the journalists, if they are joining these code of ethics in the law, so if they're part of that, they're obligated to follow these requirements that he's under. So this mechanism, as of today, it is active in the Republic of Uzbekistan. In order to adopt it, we were studying the international experience quite a while, and there was even a study tour to UK. There's an Ofcom organization which is regulating these disputes in the IT giants in the electronic area. This similar organization is there in the press world, press mass media. At that time, we thought we have responded adequately on the level of the law. If you want to go any further by imposing this self-regulation, I think it would be counterproductive to strengthen the measures of state control over the mass media. That would undermine the active law, which is directed to the fact that any kind of a art activity or economic activity of the journalist is not being read by anyone. So there is a mass media outlet. The law tries to make him be responsible on their own according to the legislation. So as of today, regulation of this area is being taken that way. As for the idea of informational ombudsman, mass media ombudsman, in our country we have, yes, there's under the parliament there's ombudsman. It's a general ombudsman. It's an ombudsman that works under, in the interest of the children and in the interest of the business community. Do we need the ombudsman that would protect mass media? In 2016, we also were studying this issue. So the first thing, when we came to the main players, they said, we don't need one. If anybody is going to be coming instead of mass media will be protecting their rights, tomorrow they're going to be violating those rights. So under the president, we have a big one. We can give them those rights, and if the ministries or departments are violating, they're going to punish. No, we don't need this guy, or tomorrow there will be a player with their commercial interests that will have a bigger authorities. Therefore, by viewing different options, we thought this is counterproductive. Besides that, I would like to um, give 2017 example. They've had a similar idea in Georgia, and AOSC never supported that idea in their expert conclusion. And the only idea to create an information ombudsman was declined. Thanks a bunch. In Moldova,
Thank you very much. In Moldova, we have our council. We are also establishing an ombudsman for access to information. So that's why we have a press council, and we are working on co-regulation, so that we work together with us in regulation. And most importantly, the information ombudsman that works in BBC or other countries, he doesn't defend the media from the people. He defends the people from the media. He comes and he says, you violated the right of this that person when you publish this information. The concept of the information ombudsman, because the media violates the citizens' rights. Thank you very much. We had a question on the second row. Да, пожалуйста. I was impressed by the difference in statistics on the referrals to the Commission between Mongolia and our Central Asian countries. So I simply want to clarify for myself why, because these statistics reflect the level of trust of the public, of the population to this institution. That's why I ask the participants of the panel from Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Mongolia, and Central Asian countries, simply for us to say the main, in your view, 2 or 3 causes why people in such the level of trust to this commission is so low, at such a low level, for example. Thank you very much.
It now, otherwise we have just 4 minutes to end. Okay, no more questions. Можно? Да, окей. Последний вопрос.
Last question. Dear colleagues, I'd like to thank the office of the OSCE for inviting this session of the Kazakh television, also all our partners. We established together with international organizations, thanks Internews and our partners in Kyrgyzstan, Mongolia, Uzbekistan, and other countries, Ukraine, Armenia, and so on, that were involved in establishing our committees. Everybody shares the experience. My only wish today is never to give up, only go forward, and unity is power. That's my question as a wish. The last. I was inspired by the wishes of our dear colleague, and I will be a bit bolder, and I say why. With the Ombudsman of Uzbekistan, I went to Germany and met with the German ombudsman and our Uzbek ombudsman at the beginning of his activities. Was as part of the Constitutional Court of the Uzbekistan, Nishanov, and when we talked to the spoke to the German ombudsman in Germany, the main rights are ensured. There are very few human rights issues there. Their ombudsman, 23 people refer to the ombudsman a year. In Uzbekistan at that time, which is called the Empire of Fear, there were thousands of human rights violations, but only one referral, or 900 something. And this to this issue, in another future, when I am involved, when I participate in such democracies, the democracy Kyrgyzstan, and democracy Kyrgyzstan has the biggest democracy, and there are most happy people are in Kyrgyzstan. Other countries who say yes, it's there. There are some mistakes and some bottlenecks and so on. We speak, and there are countries they have other problems. That's why to have more complaints, people know need to know that there is such a commission out there. They need to believe in its effectiveness. It has to be active. Speaking of the Uzbekistan's ombudsman, when in Germany we found out that 24 hours can enter any facility, the German ombudsman can enter any facility or nuclear or strategic military installations, and the Uzbek didn't have such rights at all. She couldn't even ask for a criminal case from the prosecutor general's office. Then eventually, gradually, the Uzbek ombudsman became bolder, and now she has wider rights. Now all of this is gaining momentum. So one more word: Uzbek's government, for the Uzbek parliament, not to shut down, close the road for the ombudsman, because it's working successfully in Kyrgyzstan and Mongolia. Also, one more remark: it's not going to defend only journalists. The idea was that it will defend journalists from violence and oppression and censorship, and it also defends the public from the journalists as well. It's double-edged. So in both cases, in both sides, he protects, and there are lots of problems. And most importantly, the people should know that they have these problems. When they know these problems, they will be filing complaints. They also should know that there is a body of ombudsmen that can receive complaints. Thank you, Aliyah.
Stage, but maybe do you have explanations why the public trust in Mongolia is so high and not yet there in Kazakhstan?
Раз уж задали на русском, я отвечу на русском.
Since you asked in English, in Russian, I asked answer in Russian. Only the committee is only 2 years old. I think we have everything ahead of us, and also probably the cause is that we initially worked with the journalists themselves, with the professors, with students of journalism, and tried to somehow promote media ethics among them. And the second part of our plan, a grandiose plan, is to work with the public, and probably territory is difficult to cover, to travel around and to tell people. And I'm not going to say that it's impossible, but everything is ahead of us. Thank you. And the last word to Nurgul, please. In general, low number of complaints to the self-regulation bodies. Several causes could be there. One of them is a low awareness, information of the activities of the self-regulation bodies, since it's a public platform, and it needs support to promote itself, to promote it in various ways, including information support as well. And also several causes of low number of complaints to self-regulation bodies is that could be distrust or mistrust to the Commission. Our decisions have no legal force. Our resolutions, they all are recommendational nature, and many consumers of the information, they doubt the effectiveness of this resolution. And also, it could be that the reason is not everybody files complaints to the self-regulation bodies. They have alternative ways of resolving information disputes. It has taken root in our public to go to state entities, the courts, judiciary, law enforcement, and so on. And actually, we need to raise awareness among the public, as I've already said before.
Break. I'll be signing the memorandum of cooperation. Who wants to stay with us, please stay with us. Who wants to enjoy their coffee, enjoy coffee, and have a good day. Many thanks.
Уважаемые коллеги, вы присутствуете на церемонии подписания создания Центральноазиатского медиа-нетворка. В данном меморандуме указаны цели создания данного Центральноазиатского нетворка, который создается между странами Монголия, Узбекистан, Кыргызстан, Казахстан и Таджикистан в целях развития органов саморегулирования, обмена опыта, а также продвижения идей медиаэтики и медиаграмотности в противодействии дезинформации, а также в содействии развития профессиональной журналистики. Мы благодарны всем, кто сегодня присутствует на данном мероприятии, и будем очень благодарны, если вы осветите это в своих медиа, потому что это исторический момент. Впервые в истории стран Центральной Азии Монголия вместе с нами, Узбекистан, Кыргызстан, Таджикистан и Казахстан впервые создают такой межгосударственный, региональный орган, который позволит обмениваться опытом, проводить совместные мероприятия, обучающие тренинги. Действия в данном мероприятии, а также офис ОБСЕ огромная благодарность, что дали такую возможность, площадку для подписания, для того, чтобы мы собрались здесь и начали наше сотрудничество. Давайте поаплодируем. Все подписи собраны. Поздравляем с созданием Центральноазиатского медиа Network Central Asia. Congratulations. Пожмите, пожалуйста, руки. Братья, все вместе держитесь за руки, и фотография историческая. Возьмите все, пожалуйста, за руки. Место Роза.
This session will be talking about the importance and the prospects of media literacy in Central Asia and beyond. So our main objective is to discuss projects, what we have in our regions, and also what opportunities we have for those who want to be involved in disseminating and to be the champions of media literacy. And it is my pleasure to give the floor to our colleague from Ireland, Martina Chatman. She is a national coordinator of the media literacy, and also she is an independent consultant. She specializes in various topics like political topics and political strategies, research, project implementation, and working with stakeholders. Martina, you have the floor.
Very much, everybody. I hope you can hear me okay. I'm delighted to be with you this morning, and I noticed yesterday that a number of speakers also mentioned media literacy. So what I would like to do over the next few minutes is just explore what media literacy is, the role it has in supporting media freedom, and look at the approach that Ireland has taken. So first of all, as we know, there's no universally agreed definition of media literacy, and it's a concept that often overlaps with other literacies like digital literacy, information literacy, and media education. I use the term media literacy or media information literacy interchangeably and see it as an umbrella concept that includes all of these things and more. Media literacy is about being able to access media, and that includes basic digital skills of being able to get online and use email and search engines and other online services. But it's also really being able to understand and critically evaluate the media messages that we're exposed to when we use media products and services. But media literacy is also about being able to be creative and to participate in media. It's about being able to effectively and responsibly make a contribution to the media environment and to make your voice heard as well. So it really is a set of skills and knowledge that empowers people to make informed decisions about the media that they're exposed to and the media that they create and share, and the impact that that may have on others. And media influences our everyday lives in so many ways, and it has the potential to influence our choices and our behaviors, for example, through the use of algorithms or AI or just constant media messaging. And that in turn can impact on many functions of society, of citizenship and democracy. In the past, when media was mainly delivered via TV or radio or newspapers, it was easier, but no less important, to make informed decisions about what we consumed and what we believed. It was also easier to understand things like media ownership and editorial processes, and it was easier to understand how media was distributed. These days, the infrastructure of the internet and micro-profiling and the largely unregulated nature of online media makes it very hard for individuals to make truly informed choices about the media that they use. So media literacy gives people the skills and the knowledge to recognize the value of media freedom. Skills and knowledge such as better understanding how media works, who owns it, how it's produced, distributed and regulated, who benefits from different types of media and how we might be influenced by media, as well as being able to recognize bias in media and in ourselves. But a note of caution here. Media literacy is not like traditional literacy, like reading and writing, and it's not the case that once we reach a certain level of media literacy, we'll have sufficient skills to make informed choices for the rest of our lives. Because as technology evolves, as legislation changes and new social norms emerge, we may need to develop new media literacy skills to manage new risks and opportunities. And there's a quote I really like about this. It's Alvin Toffler is credited with saying that the illiterate of the 21st century are not those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. So I see media literacy as a lifelong learning journey, and it's often a behavior change journey too. And changing behavior takes time, it takes insight, it takes commitment, and it takes the support of a wide range of stakeholders to help individuals at all stages of their learning journey. And this has been recognised in countries across Europe and beyond. And approaches to media literacy increasingly involve a cross-sector, multi-stakeholder approach, and that often includes the development of media literacy networks. For example, in Ireland, the Irish media regulator provides administrative and funding resources to support Media Literacy Ireland, which is the network in Ireland. And this network it's an independent, informal alliance of organisations and individuals who are working together on a mainly voluntary basis to promote media literacy. There's over 300 members of media literacy in Ireland, and they're drawn from a very broad range of sectors, such as broadcast media, which is public service media, commercial media, community media, academia, information society organisations such as libraries, formal education, public service agencies, civil society, online providers, the film industry, and the press. Because within Media Literacy Ireland, we believe that no single organisation can effectively promote media literacy in isolation. And we also recognise that different members will promote media literacy in different ways at different times. So really, the network acts as an enabler for media literacy. And it does this by facilitating dialogue, the exchange of ideas, and encouraging the development of sustainable media literacy projects. There's 4 key areas that we work in. One is communications. There's nothing kind of new about that. It's emails, websites, and events. Then there's coordination, and this goes on behind the scenes quite a lot. Sometimes we describe ourselves a little bit like a dating agency for media literacy organisations. So we help match up organisations with different needs who maybe want to work on similar projects. And then we have innovation. So for example, we started the first Media Literacy Awards programme in Ireland this year, which was designed to recognise best practice across the board. And then we work across promotion, and our kind of flagship project in this area is Be Media Smart, which is a national campaign to help citizens be media smart with a call to action to stop, think and check that the information they receive from any source is accurate and reliable. This campaign first launched in 2019 with iterations in 2020 and 2021. But the campaign is managed and developed by Media Literacy Ireland, but there's a huge number of organisations involved in promoting the campaign, and it's all done on a mainly voluntary basis. And free ad credit is available from the main online providers. And then people are directed to the bemediasmart.ie website, which provides tips and guidance on how to verify information. And all MLI members promote this campaign in the way that's most suitable to their audience. And we find that this works because people get the message from trusted third-party intermediaries. I suspect I'm probably out of time at this stage, so I'm happy to answer questions later.
Спасибо. Спасибо, Мартина.
Well, thank you, Martina. Thank you so much. Thank you for a very substantive presentation. So let us ask questions at the very end, because all speakers should first speak, and then we'll listen to everyone, and then at the end we'll be asking our questions. Now the floor is given to Saida Sulaimanova. She is the director of the Modern Journalism Development Center from Uzbekistan. Saida's team is involved in media literacy and developing media literacy in Uzbekistan. They've been doing this for a couple of years, and they're actively involved in Central Asian projects on media literacy, digital literacy development in the region. Saida, you have the floor. You have 6 to 7 minutes. Well, thank you, Duman. I want to thank the organizers for inviting me here to participate in this event and to speak in front of the audience and speak here as a panelist and tell you a little more on how we promote media literacy, informational literacy in Uzbekistan among youth, specifically to develop the freedom of the media. So let me tell you up front that our organization, this is a pretty young organization, civil society organization. We were created back in 2018, and since 2019, we've been focusing on developing media literacy in Uzbekistan. So one of the areas of our activities is developing and introducing media literacy in the educational system in Uzbekistan. Now, this work is supported by the Deutsche Welle Academy, and BMZ, the ministry, we cooperate with the German Ministry of Cooperation, and they're working in the region within the framework of developing freedom of the media in Central Asia. So this project is the fourth year of project implementation. We're proud of the fact that our national partners are the Ministry of People's Education. This year they were renamed to the Ministry of Preschool and School Education of the Republic of Uzbekistan, and the largest organization agency on youth affairs in Uzbekistan. Previously, they used to work under the president's administration, and last year they became a part of the Ministry of Uzbekistan on youth policy and sports. So jointly with these national partners and also with the support of our state institutions, first of all, the Parliament of Uzbekistan, we are able throughout these years to make certain steps on the step-by-step introduction of media literacy in education, and that is a key competence in the modern world, in the world of information and the media, because this is what we're trying to do with the help of our projects, with the help of our activities. And I believe that the most meaningful activity would be a couple of components of the project that was implemented in Uzbekistan. So first of all, we work with state institutions. Like I said, we're trying to get them interested, and we want to send the message that this should be a joint activity. We need to be working hand in hand. We need to be working together, and state institutions do have certain mechanisms and ways that allow to develop and implement media literacy in schools and higher educational facilities. First of all, at the level of passing legislation and in adopting state standards on education and state programs. So in this regard, we conducted several workshops for state institutions and civil servants, specifically on discussing what media literacy is all about, why we need to have it in Uzbekistan, how we can jointly introduce it in school curricula, and so on. We also conducted research with target groups. So these were school teachers in pilot schools, and these were the students in pilot schools, and so on. And of course, the next component, we were also training schools and school teachers and in various schools in Uzbekistan on how to teach media literacy to school children. And also we have an important component, that's the regional partnership, because the Deutsche Welle project helps implement, works in two Central Asian countries, the Kyrgyz Republic and the Republic of Uzbekistan. And Aychuruk will tell more in her presentation about the component that is implemented by our partners in Kyrgyzstan. So the next important component of the project, that's the educational platform. Educational platform is called Media Savod, who was established last year, so within this project, and it's supposed to be a resource base for teachers and for journalists and methodology experts, school children, all those who are interested in training and specifically on how to train others in the area of media literacy. So this platform is quite interactive. There are all kinds of content here, a lot of useful things, a lot of methodological resources, a lot of useful media content that is aimed at a very convenient and easy way to learn media literacy. So besides, our center is also working, doing some more activities. We're working on content and media content related projects, and one of them is Media School Uzbekistan. It is implemented with the support of Deutsche Welle Academy. It's been the fourth year in Uzbekistan. And within the framework of schools, we train journalists and media managers in two major areas. So journalism and media management. And every year we have 8 projects, 4 media projects, and 4 projects on monetization of business. which are aimed at building the capacity of local media in Uzbekistan.
Now, the legal clinic for the support of journalists and bloggers was also created back in 2019. It's too a very unique entity, if you will. Now, I'm not going to go into great details regarding that because my friends yesterday from the media clinic already talked to you about its operations. They also told you that our legal clinic can continue to render free counseling to bloggers and journalists. There is a website, legalclinic.uz, that contains a lot of interesting content on legal journalism, safety and security of journalists, legislative aspects pertaining to journalists and their security. Now, a couple of other content products that we in our center prepared as part of the regional project for the digital literacy, the regional project on media literacy and digital literacy. This project was implemented together with our counterparts from Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, and this regional project was aimed at improving the legislative framework, national legislative frameworks in these countries of Central Asia, eventually aiming to expand the digital rights, empower citizenry of Central Asia in the digital realm. Now, in order to promote media literacy and engage the young people into our activities and to improve the overall media literacy, we also conduct several other activities that gathered a lot of stakeholders. The young people, of course, being the primary beneficiary group, as well as state bodies and other stakeholders that were gathered at that venue and discuss in various formats various ideas, practices, and experiences. We also invite regional partners of ours because our regional partners have been involved in our work for quite a while. They have accumulated a vast body of experience. They have things to share, things to teach, and one of such capacity building activities took place back in November 2022, the so-called Media Ivan 2022, an outreach and awareness raising activity that was able to gather a tremendous crowd. Now, yes, I believe if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them and to talk to you more about how we involve young people into our media literacy activities. Well, thank you so much, Saida. I agree. Indeed, in Uzbekistan, it's pretty cool. It's great that you are doing so well to promote media literacy among the young people. To the best of my understanding, similar projects are being implemented in Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Kazakhstan. So let's get to listen to Alona Koshkina, who is the coordinator of media literacy projects for the Central Asian International Center for Journalism, Media, and Net. Their projects are aimed not only at developing fact-checking, but also digital rights, media literacy, and the company in which Alona works pursues a separate goal, which is really media literacy in Kazakhstan, which is something that she's been doing for several years. And Alona, you too have 6 or 7 minutes. Thank you so much, Arman. Now, indeed, I will continue the conversation that my colleagues here started before me, Saida, and I believe that my colleague Aichurok will also add to what I have to say. Overall, for your information, speaking of media literacy, the comprehensive approach that we've been employing for quite a while, it's really about a multi-tier promotion promotion of and training in media literacy, not only in Kazakhstan, but also throughout Central Asia and throughout the world, really. Again, media literacy is not a novelty. This is something that's been with us for quite a while. However, with each year, we can see how important it is to teach people in media literacy, how important to train authors and journalists in media literacy, how important it is to instill skills in media literacy in our young people, faculty members of various schools of journalism, because again, every year we can see that the world of the media has been growing very steadily. The artificial intelligence has become an integral component of the media. By the way, we talked about that yesterday, and we're trying to keep pace with all the technologies, with the introduction of new components uh, of our training projects, again, which is something that I'm gonna talk to you about now. So, at the first tier, at the first level, we work with media literacy experts, human rights activists. At the moment, as of today, we maintain two major projects, which were commenced relatively recently. The first is our new initiative, which we presented back in November 2022. Back then, we initiated the creation of a community to combat media digital persecutions in Central Asia and Eastern Europe. As recently as last year, at our annual activity, the Central Asia Internet Forum, Internet CA, which was, by the way, it was its 14th annual session. Last year it was the 13th session. This year is going to be the 14th session. So at that event, we talked about our plans for the upcoming 3 years, and we invited our colleagues, experts, all those who are who are involved in this expert pool, media literacy expert pool. We shared our plans. Our plans are pretty ambitious. At the moment, we're preparing a platform, a venue for stakeholder engagement, and we intend to continue rendering financial, informational, methodological, and other forms of assistance to our current and prospective partners who are developing media literacy as well as digital rights and in digital literacy in the Central Asian region. In other words, digital empowerment. Also, since 2020, we've been closely cooperating with the Eurasian Network for Fact-Checking and Media Literacy, EFMN. As of today, 23 members from various countries, including from Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and Kyrgyzstan, Georgia, Azerbaijan, Armenia, Germany, as well as other countries, are members of this network. We actively work on our joint partnership projects. We file project proposals, and in addition to our project activities, we also maintain this ongoing dialogue about what we need to do in order to progress further, in order to actually continue developing. And I believe my colleagues here will attest to the fact that our network has been very effective. And of course, media literacy definitely needs to be developed. We need to tell people about how important it is to be media literate. So during our annual fora, during our annual hackathons, we consistently introduce this component into our sessions. As part of Tech Camp Kazakhstan last year, and as part of various internet fora, we conduct these activities. Then there is another tier, another level that we believe we should focus more efforts on, which is the implementation of media literacy in training and education. Now, in universities, media literacy has already become an integral component of media and ethics courses, courses such as on subjects such as data journalism. However, there is no dedicated course, there is no dedicated subject called media literacy, regrettably. Also, there is no dedicated media literacy as a subject in high school curriculum, and that's why I was so happy to learn from Saida about a project that they're implementing in Uzbekistani secondary school system. Regrettably, we in Kazakhstan cannot share such a great piece of news. However, we are working to have this incorporated into the high school curriculum. Also, we try to enhance qualification. In other words, do training and retraining of journalism faculty members in universities. And here, we're talking not only about basic competences, but also the introduction of sessions on AI assisted journalism, for instance, or multimedia platforms. Additionally, we we conduct ongoing mentoring and conduct various TOTs for journalists who will spread that knowledge on media literacy among their peers and colleagues. Now, I can't help but remind you that it is a major breakthrough that took place back in 2021. Back then, the Ministry of Education and Science of Republic of Kazakhstan, again, now it's called the Ministry of Enlightenment, they drafted and approved the Kazakhstan's first training course on media literacy. And it so coincided, or perhaps we were lucky that the Ministry of Education and Science back then listened to us. For the academic year of 2021-2022, media literacy was introduced as an elective course. So that's a success in its own right. And of course, the teaching supplement, training supplement, or teaching aid was absolutely perfectly timed. We also try to work with young people within the framework of our Central Asian project that had been implemented over 3 years. We created an online platform called Clever Asia. More than 129,000 applications from Central Asia was received, including 48,000 from Kazakhstan alone. Now it's basically a regional online gaming platform for young people. Most of the applications came not from capitals, not from major cities of Kazakhstan, but from rural areas. And we're talking about rural young people for whom media literacy is something that, something that's not very popular because they don't want to study at school and then come back home and study again. However, using our mass online courses, which were based on games, which were based on engaging manner of delivery, we were able to galvanize that interest of the rural young people. Also, since 2020, we've been recruiting people into our online fact check academy. We already graduated 300 proudly graduated 300 persons, and this year there will be even more graduates, and we invite all prospective students to apply to our online fact check academy. And last but not the least, in addition to this training, in addition to our networking projects, we've been closely tracking the overall level of media literacy in our country using polls and surveys. For instance, back in December 2020, almost 3 years ago, we conducted a survey of trying to identify the level of media literacy among high school students of Kazakhstan. Now, since time is of the essence and we're somewhat behind the schedule, if you happen to have any questions regarding the projects and programs that we've been implementing, please approach me and I will be happy to talk to you privately. Regrettably so, yes indeed. And Alono, thank you so much for being so considerate regarding the time of your fellow panelists. We apologize, but unfortunately we have to stick to the order of procedure here. And I would like to now give the floor to our next speaker, Ms. Aychara Kusubayeva, a founder and director of Media Sabak of Kyrgyzstan. Her foundation deals with media information literacy, promotion of media literacy in Kyrgyzstan, and not only in Kyrgyzstan actually, but throughout Central Asia. So Aychara, again, despite the fact that you represent the host country, you only have 7 minutes. Well, thank you so much, Daman. Hello, everyone. I would like to thank the organizers for finally including a session on the importance of media literacy and the experience that we've accumulated in the area of spreading media literacy. Because again, media literacy as a skill, as an ability, as an important feature of journalism, absolutely has become a very important thing. The more we discuss this, the better, the stronger our materials are, the stronger our community is. So we've been working in the area of media literacy since 2012. Back then, we started media literacy courses for university students based on the Center for the Support of the Media, which is one of the major NGOs in Kyrgyzstan. However, then, since 2017, in 2017, we started working on the integration of media literacy into the formal education system. So here is where we started. Originally, we drafted the concept of media literacy, of media education with the components on media literacy. We analyzed state educational standards that that pretty much define what is taught in schools and universities. And based on findings of that analysis, we prepared our recommendations on how to integrate media literacy, in which courses, to which extent, and how the state educational standards should be changed in order to contain this new component on media literacy. Now, all these recommendations, like I said, we prepared them back in 2017. However, last year, back in 2022, finally, media literacy was eventually integrated into the state educational standard, which is tremendous success for us. We are the Central Asia's first country where the government officially integrated media literacy into its formal education, which is governed by state educational standards promulgated by the Ministry of Education. So that's a major breakthrough. Also, within the scope of the civic studies, or the subject officially called Citizen and Society, we incorporated media literacy for seventh year high school students, seventh graders for junior high. Now it's a mandatory part of their junior high school curriculum. We also prepared a qualification enhancement course for teachers of high schools. In other words, now the Department of Secondary Education set the goal to have at least 30% of all high school and junior high school teachers to be trained in media literacy. Also, all the materials that we prepared back in 2017 and 2018 were successfully integrated into this TOT, and now the Institute for Secondary Education on its own independently trains teachers of schools of Kyrgyzstan in media literacy, which is great news. So, what kind of materials did we create? Well, the repository of materials, exercises, teaching supplements that we prepared were geared mostly toward online media literacy classes for seventh graders, eighth graders, ninth graders, 10th graders. Those are not, and for university students. No, those are just not online mass courses. They are accompanied by video clips, cartoons, videos. We have tremendous amount of teaching supplements, books, printed materials, visual aids for both students and teachers. All of these were prepared specifically for them in order to facilitate the teaching and the learning process. In addition to that, we also maintained classes for support classes for teachers to help them integrate media literacy into their respective subjects, whether it's geography, chemistry, physics. In other words, we're promoting the idea that media literacy can be incorporated into any subject. It doesn't only have to be civics or civics education or citizen and society. No. We've been working with young people since 2018. So, every year, we conduct a summer camp, media station, within the framework of our project with Deutsche Welle Academy. And in those summer camps, for over 7 to 9 days, we work on graduating young aspiring bloggers and journalists who learn not only do they learn media literacy, but also learn how to produce original content, how to work with cameramen, how to work with editors, how to work with producers. As a matter of fact, as recently as yesterday, we completed our annual summer camp at Lake Issyk, which this year graduated 40 students, and I returned from Lake Issyk last night. So every year, our young graduates create media rooms in their schools, in their universities, and as Alona said, I'm so happy to learn that upon return to their schools, our graduates really become their own high school reporters, high school newsrooms, high school editorials, whether in their high schools or universities. Also, last year, in 2022, we started working with religious communities, with madrasas in particular. In Kyrgyzstan, there are more than 190 madrasas that operate throughout the country. These madrasas are attended by boys and girls. A lot of them are live-in resident madrasas. So we also have dedicated summer camps, sex disaggregated summer camps for boys and girls. We also work with teachers. We maintain a very wide network of teachers and faculty and university faculty members that our fellow thinkers that help us promote media literacy in their schools and universities. They create their own newsrooms. There are more than 100 schools that are our partners, that are members of this network. And this year, we started engaging teachers from madrasas, these religious schools, because we want our counterparts from religious schools to integrate media literacy too in their curriculum as well, despite the fact that madrasa is a religious school. So in order to support the motivation of teachers and faculty members, we annually conduct a contest on the best media literacy class, and we motivate and positively reinforce these teachers and faculty members by giving them prizes in the form of laptops, tablets, notebooks. So there is a website, Media Sabak Clever SE, which is a repository of various educating classes against the hate speech, media literacy, etc., etc. It's definitely a regional website that is accessible by all countries of Central Asia, from Kyrgyzstan to Tajikistan. Now, this is a very quick overview of how this platform works, and as Alona said, it contains gifts, contest prizes, in other words, all elements of motivation of all those young people from rural areas who really need a gaming interface in order to be involved in learning media literacy.
So we have a lot of cartoons that we show on our national channels. Our cartoons are in 5 languages, Russian and 4 Central Asian languages. And at the same time, we create work with bloggers, and we create bloggers. They have a large audience. So what bloggers do, many people watch it. So this year we created 15 new video clips with the 101 studio. So we have a lot of views, and we have separate content for students of madrasa. And the last one here, we have some training materials. They're in open access. You can take a look, you can download them. And we also have the program for exchange of experience, sharing experience for teachers when they travel to Germany and Finland, study tours to Finland and Germany. This year we visited Finland and Germany with the teachers and experts. So we have the project is called Texture Dim. It's a project with the Internews, and we have a Central Asian Conference on Media Literacy, where we gather all stakeholders. So all stakeholders assemble from Central Asia and Europe, and this is where we discuss only media literacy, media competence, on how we should get integrated, what problems we have, and where exactly we should be working. Thank you, Arturk. Let's give a round of applause. I believe media literacy is it's a major component. Yesterday, my colleagues were asking me, how can we fight disinformation? We can fight disinformation only when all of our citizens are media literate, and when automatically we will have this critical thinking that will be helping us. So now let us ask questions. I'll ask my questions first. So one question to each speaker, and then I'll give the floor to the audience. So the first question to Ms. Martina. Now, Martina, can you please tell us, you mentioned in your presentation, you spoke about risks, certain risks of unpredictable consequences. Can you speak in more detail about this?
I'd be happy to speak on that.
Sorry, Martin, у вас 1 минута.
You have only 1 minute for the answer.
Okay, I'll try and do that very quickly. I think one of the biggest risks we need to look at is if we think of media literacy as behavior change, it's trying to understand what exactly the impact of training is and what, if any, behavior change comes out as a result. So, for example, a lot of media literacy will rightly focus on encouraging critical thinking and encouraging people to question media, where it comes from, understand the message more. But for some people, there's a very fine line between healthy skepticism and critical cynicism. So we just need to be careful that media literacy interventions don't accidentally end up encouraging people to completely distrust media and completely distrust everything that they engage with. So I think that's one key risk. I think there's another key risk in terms of lack of sustained funding for media literacy across the board. There's an issue that media literacy touches on a lot of different policy areas, and as a result, sometimes governments or it's very difficult to understand who should be funding media literacy on an ongoing basis. There was a lot of talk and very encouraging comments about media literacy being brought into education curriculum, which is hugely important and absolutely right. But I think we also need to be really careful not to exclude people who are outside formal education, because it's great that media literacy training is available to young people through schools. And again, even when it is available to young people in schools, I think we need to be careful that if it's compulsory for all children, that's wonderful. If it's an optional subject, there is also the risk that some children will get left behind, and that creates an even greater media literacy gap, if you like. I could go on, but that's probably over my 1 minute already.
Спасибо.
Well, thank you so much, dear colleagues. Also, Martina, she also mentioned, spoke about schools and the fact that training for youth is important. We all talk about media and informational literacy. Let us speak in more detail. Maybe you have some data, Saida Aychuruk, maybe you have some data on how this subject may have an impact on the public. Do you have any statistics, any research? What was the impact of this subject on the public? Yes, Alona, you spoke about research among school children, so maybe. Yes, I believe this is a question to me. Like I said, like I mentioned earlier, in December last year, we conducted research. We were trying to measure the media literacy level among Kazakhstani students. So we surveyed the students of 9th graders in rural and urban schools, including private and public secondary schools in Kazakhstan in various regions. So in the surveying, we had about over 6,500 respondents. So we selected 5,900 because some of the questionnaires, regrettably, they were not filled in properly. But still, this is a representative number for us to somehow assess the level. As far as we can see, over 60% of all those who participated in our survey, so they have a pretty high level of media literacy. So how can that be explained? In fact, just like I said earlier, back in 2021, media literacy was introduced as an optional subject in public secondary schools. So the Ministry of Education finally introduced media literacy. So what do we mean by optional subjects? So these are the subjects where the school principals, directors may recommend that to their teachers, which can be taught as an optional subject, as an optional class. And as we can see in the survey, the majority of our respondents, they indeed said that they had such classes in schools, and we believe that about 65%, this is a pretty good percentage, pretty good number. So this is what helped raise this level. So 8th graders back then and 9th graders now, so they were taught that they went through this media literacy class and they demonstrated very good results. We believe this is a very good number, and we need to move forward. We shouldn't stop. We need to introduce media literacy at all levels, including in schools. And the way I see it, so many people hear us online now, so the Ministry of Education can hear us now. We'll be very much grateful. So we're ready to work jointly with you. We are ready to provide our resources. We do have a lot of resources for joint effective work. Thank you, thank you. So Saida Aychuruk. So I would say in my presentation, I said that we did have some experience of conducting a research study. It was a study of it's not a very widely maybe representative study, but still it had to do with the launch of a project on introducing media literacy and education in Uzbekistan. So with the help of a sociological institute, we conducted this research. This research covered the target groups of our project, and it demonstrated that the level of media literacy among the respondents, and these were the students, the teachers, and the school, directors and principals. So this was the Fergana Valley of Uzbekistan, and the Fergana province, and the city of Tashkent and the Tashkent province. So the research demonstrated that the media literacy level is about 50% compared to the baseline level. So which we took as a reference, which was took as a base, or taken as a base. So at the end of the project, there was an increase, and we're so happy about this because once again, at least this was a small survey, but still we were able to see that in 1 year was enough to raise that level among the students and the teachers and the leadership of schools and other educational facilities. Okay, thank you, Arturuk. Do you have any comments? So I want to say that this media literacy subject on hate speech, it is integrated in our universities. So at the journalism departments, media department. So this is in the capital where they train journalists. We also have an optional elective course where they train future teachers. So right now we integrated a subject. It's called per person, humans in society, and this there are no textbooks or guidables, so teachers were developing their materials themselves. So there are specific topics on media literacy for each grade. And the problem is the media literacy topic, this is not a separate topic like math or geography. No, you have to always update it because things change. But well, the basis is the same. We try to integrate it so that we could provide some criteria of critical thinking so that we could also develop critical thinking. So now our approach is in all subjects, there must be a component of media literacy, irrespective of whether what class it is. So in all classes, we try to integrate as a cross-cutting theme. And one big topic for this year, so 30% of the teachers will be those who teach liberal arts and humanitarian subjects. So they'll be taught in media literacy. This is not a high number, but if media literacy is integrated in the general educational standards, that means we need to train all those involved in the educational system, not just teachers, but also the educational departments in the regions and the city level educational departments. So it's important to raise media competence among those working in the ministry itself and in the Kyrgyz Academy of Sciences. So, and the Kazakh and Uzbek academies, I believe the same, yes. Thank you, dear. This is a question from the audience. Please raise your hands if you have any questions. So, excuse me, can you introduce yourself? My name is Abdullayev, the Parliament of Uzbekistan. I want to draw the attention to the following problem. Let us say there is a group of individuals like social workers and so on, and the public may require that they have certain skills. For example, let's say in Uzbekistan, for many years, we had this. We had a computer. It's a computerized. So if you're a civil servant, then you'll be funded. You'll be paying for raising your computer skills, and your information systems will be provided. So you cannot work effectively unless you know how to work with computers and computer literacy. So a civil servant, he or she has to know some computer literacy skills. So the same is true about openness. The government should be accountable and open to society, to the public, and the public may require, demand at all levels for civil servants to fully ensure this for the public. Speaking of media literacy, are there any accomplishments. Now, speaking of civil servants, what should we demand? What can we demand from civil servants in the area of media literacy? Let's say the minister may simply instruct it to the press service and say, I don't have to know anything about media literacy. I have my press service. They'll be responding. This is enough for me. Is it okay or not? And this is the first part. And the second part, speaking of our experience, we worked with Saida a lot and they're helping us. So members of parliament, they are elected, so you cannot force them to be media literate. People voted for him or her and they represent a certain, well, region or a certain number of people in the parliament, but at the same time, he or she is a politician. And they carry out some informational work. So they also have, blogs and make some posts. So the way they behave, so the political situation all depends on this. So I want to thank the center. Thank you for helping us. It's not that we're also making overviews and they're telling us about the new technologies that exist. So our MPs, they perceive it very well. So the use of information and media literacy for specific groups of individuals. Well, so your question is, what you're asking is, should civil servants, public officials, should they also have a certain level of media literacy, right? So let us start with Martina. So what do you think? Civil servants, should they be media? What about Ireland? What is your experience? And then we'll speak about Central Asia.
I think that the short answer to that question, if I have understood the question correctly, is that everybody, whether they're civil servants or not, should have the opportunity to develop their media literacy skills and on an ongoing basis. That would be the ideal, but we don't live in an ideal world. And it's very difficult to... Sorry, was somebody trying to come in there? No, we don't live in an ideal world, and it's very difficult to ensure that people, A, have opportunities to develop their skills once they're outside formal education, and B, if they do have the opportunity, then it's about motivating them to actually keep their skills up to date. And I think this goes back to kind of lifelong learning and behavior change. With media literacy, it's not a case that, you do a course in January 2021 and then you're media literate for life. It's got to be an ongoing piece of work and consistently and continually looking at your skills, looking what new technology is there, looking at different aspects like that to keep skills up to date. But I do think that as anybody learning any kind of computer or basic digital literacy skills, there should also be a component of kind of media literacy and critical understanding there as well.
Спасибо.
Well, thank you so much to your colleagues. Well, thank you. First of all, I want to thank Mr. Abdullayev. Yes, indeed. The Legislative Committee, Legislative Chamber on Informational Policy, Informational Technologies, they're always supporting us, supporting the initiatives of our center on further promoting media literacy in Uzbekistan. And we conducted some work on training our civil servants in the area of media literacy and developing this understanding and basic understanding of what media literacy is, why we need it in modern world, and how it can be integrated. So this work already yields some results by now answering the question. So Mr. Ilholm, you asked a question. I believe we need to have standards. There should be baseline minimum standards in terms of knowledge and skills for this category of civil servants, public officials, so decision makers, if you will, people who are responsible for implementing, carrying out state public policy, and also the policy on introducing media literacy. Yesterday, we were talking a lot and saying that in Uzbekistan, this program was adopted, it is implemented, but if we speak honestly, it is not implemented at a very effective level. It's not a full-scale effective program. Some of the components, yes, they're effective. For example, our consultations directly with the profile ministries. so the Ministry of Preschool School Education. So consultations on introducing the subject, at least as an optional subject, at least in some schools and in some classes or training for the teachers. Well, we faced a problem. It's a financial problem. And this whole thing requires a lot of public funding. A lot of money in the budget should be allocated to subsidies should be allocated. So every single person working in schools, there are new teachers who have to be trained or retrained on media literacy because nobody was doing it before. This requires quite some funding, so it should be bankrolled by somebody. And I believe we should be able to find these funds because media literacy, this is a number one issue for young people specifically. Well, thank you. Aichuruk and Alona, will you have any comments? Should we have, should our ministers be media literate, or they should simply delegate everything to their secretaries? I will answer media literacy. This is the most important thing. There are two aspects here. First, consumption of information and creating information. Who is doing that? We should not be looking whether this is a civil servant or not, or this is an important skill, and this is a competency that pretty much belongs to everyone, starting from children up to people who are 60, 70 years old. I believe this should be the same for everyone, and for both for business structures and for public institutions and for legislators, since we have the Ministry of Education doing this most of the time. So all those involved in the educational system, they should be media literate. But journalists and information consumers, that's number one. Since
Since these days it's really the bloggers that have become the mainstream part of the audience, I believe we need to engage bloggers even more compared to journalists. Now, I do agree with my colleagues. All I have to add is we should not look at media literacy as some kind of a complex, convoluted, or detached subject or course. No. Again, it's also not fair to say that only press secretaries or PR people need to learn media literacy. No, everyone has to be media literate. You can become media literate by educating yourself. All you need is there is so much information available on the internet. So if you are a desiring person who wants to be more media literate, you have every opportunity to become media literate. There are all the resources available online, then there are mass online courses available to all of us. So to separate, say, media literacy is a thing for certain groups of people, but not something that shouldn't be learned by others, no, this is an incorrect way to say it. I believe that every citizen, every person who is media literate is pretty much a person who is literate. These days, being literate is not just about reading and writing, it's also about learning and being able to consume media properly. So media literacy is an integral component of literacy overall. All right, dear colleagues, we only have time for a couple questions left. Any questions left? Yes, absolutely. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much for having me the opportunity. I'm from Mongolia, so I would like to ask the representative of the Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan participants. My question is that it's the really great work that the media literacy subjects already officially in the curriculum. That's really great because in Mongolia it hasn't not yet. So my question is, what's the challenging when you are doing done this work? Also, you said the application that works in 5 languages, right? So is it possible to add it in another language? Maybe in Mongolian, is it possible? Maybe it's not, but just wondering. Thank you so much.
Чурек, наверное, начнете, да?
Thank you very much for your question. And it is a huge challenge, and it took a lot of time to integrating media literacy to the curriculum, to the educational standard. We started the process of promoting from 2012 and was developed a lot of materials, was made a lot of research work, and a lot of recommendation in the different levels of government. This time we are still working in this field because we still have not enough material in local language. We still not have enough trained, skilled teachers, and department in universities, pedagogical, we are also preparing the teachers. Regarding the second part of your question, I think everything is possible. We can cooperate and translating to Mongolian language, it would be better from your side because for us it will be really difficult. Could we agree to share with our materials? Of course, yes. And after the session, we can talk about how we can do. And I think if there's a desire and partners who want to do it, we will be just happy.
Спасибо, Саида, пожалуйста.
Thank you very much for your question. As a matter of fact, in the course of our work, as we were trying to incorporate media literacy into the system of education in Uzbekistan, we try to work with our line ministries and agencies, right? So dealing with various ministries and agencies, we learned that they are different. While the Ministry of People's Education, the ministry that covers preschool and school education, demonstrated goodwill, willingness to cooperate, receptiveness, responsiveness. They were willing to collaborate with us to facilitate what we want to accomplish in our efforts to build capacity of the Ministry of People's Education. The Ministry of People's Education also provided us with access to pilot schools, and I'm talking about secondary schools. So that was good, positive experience. While the other ministry, the Ministry of Secondary and Higher Education, is a relatively closed institution. They were not as receptive, they were not as responsive, and they were not willing to establish partnership with us. So that's probably a very good lesson learned. Dealing with state agencies and ministries can be a challenge. Another lesson learned is that you will have to work a lot in order to generate that pool of experts, a pool of teachers, that contingent of teachers and faculty members who could not only teach media literacy to students, but also run TOTs for their peers, for their fellow teachers. Now, that's why we cooperate with several other NGOs and civil society organizations, because they alone, nor we alone, can instill media literacy on our own. The system of secondary education in our country is huge. The number of secondary schools is absolutely tremendous. There are thousands and tens of thousands of high school students, librarians, teachers, a lot of people we need to teach in media literacy, so that then, in a systemic manner, could then teach media literacy to secondary school students. That would require a lot of money. That would require tremendous state support. And more importantly, you would probably need, and that would probably be the biggest challenge for you, just like it was for all of us here, political will. You need to secure political will from your political leadership, from your country's leadership, to not only be vested in terms of, initiatives or proclamations or declarations, but also allocate funding and staffing and other resources to you. Thank you very much. Those were excellent questions. In conclusion, let me just say that being media literate is not just a right, it's an obligation, it's a responsibility of every single citizen and human being on this planet. We live in the digital age of era of information. You can become victim of identity fraud, of being the victim of fake news. You can become victim or of recruitment by various extremist propaganda. And in order to avoid that, you need to be media literate. It's not just popular or fashionable or voguish to be media literate. It's your obligation if you want to survive. Dear colleagues, thank you so much. Thank you for being with us, staying here with us today. Thank you for your insights. I'm calling on all of you to subscribe, to follow Media Sabak, the International Center for the Support of Contemporary Journalism, MediaNet, the Irish Media Literacy Network and Foundation from Ireland. So please stay aware. Thank you all, and we will see you next time.
And we will now continue with a format that I'm very much looking forward to, because we have invited a guest to share her personal observations with us in a stage talk on the topic of aligning media freedom and security concerns, which I think was really one of the recurring issues that we had in this conference. And it will be personal observations of a former journalist, now media regulator, and you have already heard her this morning as moderator in our first session on media self-regulation, and I'm very much looking forward to this, and welcome Liliana Vizu on the stage. Thank you.
Good afternoon, good morning. Am I supposed to walk like that? Okay. So, as I mentioned, 6 years ago, I was set to depart to Bishkek with my 1-year-old daughter, and our flight got cancelled because there was a sandstorm in Ulaanbaatar and the airplane couldn't land. And I was hosted in this very hotel by the airline, and I'm therefore so happy to be 6 years back in the same hotel and take part of this conference. So many thanks to the OSCE representative for the freedom of the media, Teresa Ribeiro, for extending this invitation to attend, to participate, to moderate, and to deliver this stage talk. I left Kyrgyzstan 6 years ago with very mixed feelings. On one hand, I wanted to go home because we had to celebrate we had a party for 1 year for my daughter waiting for us. And on the other hand, I was leaving friends, I was leaving colleagues, I was leaving a great professional experience I had here while working at the Internews, trying to bolster and to reform KTRK. I worked with Adel Laisheva, and I'm happy to see her now here also in the room, and to see so many friends. And I was leaving my friends, and my friends were here, and colleagues, they were really trying to advance media freedom, to safeguard human rights, to safeguard gender issues and equal chances. And they were really, really trying to safeguard democracy. So now that I'm back here, of course, I regret to see there are still pressures on independent media. There is harassment, there are legal attacks all over the region. So I do feel for my colleagues that have to face economic hardship, are still dependent on donors, on international community for support, and are still struggling to meet that economic and financial independence that will secure their independent activity. And on top of all these hardships, we've seen an abundance of fakes, an abundance of disinformation. We've seen attempts of foreign states to manipulate and to have malign influence into the domestic affairs of some other countries. And 24th of February 2022, we all woke up to a new tragic reality. The world woke up to a new reality. And the invasion of Russia in Ukraine brought a disastrous humanitarian situation. But along the humanitarian suffering, we've seen a wave of disinformation coming from Russian state-backed media. In Moldova, where I come from, a country neighboring Ukraine, these disinformation campaigns unleashed on our national audiovisual space. So for the first time, we saw how solid democracies took steps to limit the activity of some Russian outlets. This is what this war brought, a new approach of old democracy towards freedom of the media, freedom of expression. We saw in the first week of the war, we saw the Council of the European Union limiting the broadcasting activities of RT and Sputnik. We saw Canada on the 17th of March restricting the activity of RT France and RT basically limiting the authorization in their non-Canadian programming. We saw the next day Ofcom, the UK regulator, suspending the license, revoking the license of RT, and Ofcom, who is considered to be one of the oldest and best regulators in the world, a model of regulating, they said that yes, they do share the importance of the freedom of expression, but they felt it was a necessary and proportionate step in a democracy. Not to mention the Baltic states, who immediately restricted the activity of all Russian media outlets and websites. We also saw different approaches. We saw countries like Norway, we saw countries like Switzerland, who felt that their society is heavily resilient. They felt that activity of RT and Sputnik does not pose a threat to their democracy, precisely because their society were highly literate. And the approach was that facts should fight disinformation. In Moldova, as I mentioned, because of the abundance of disinformation campaigns by the Russian Federation, we took steps to secure our national space. The Committee for Extraordinary Situation on the 2nd of March banned the broadcast of Russian informative programs, military programs, and analytical programs. The same sort of ban was then transposed into the national legislation. And by the end of the year, in December last year, 6 licenses were suspended of RTR, basically of TV channels that were broadcasting Russian contents, RTR, NTV, Первый Moldova, that was broadcasting the content of Первый Канал. And of course, we faced criticism. Local media NGOs asked for what they called extensive arguments. Madame Ribeiro came to visit us and stressed the importance of freedom of the media when taking such decisions. The General Secretary of Council of Europe came to see me and basically expressing the same concerns. So the authorities were in a situation to provide those proofs because the decision to suspend was based on national security grounds, but also it relied on the sanctions that the Audiovisual Council that I chair gave throughout the year. And throughout the year, we gave more than 80 sanctions just for the coverage of the war, of the unilateral coverage, unbalanced, and basically. So why I'm mentioning this? Because the question arises: how do we reconcile the two perspectives? The perspective of protecting the national space of a country from a malign foreign influence, and the freedom of expression. And yes, I do chair now a media regulatory authority, which is regarded by many as an authority that brings restrictions in an activity of a media. So for me, how do I navigate this? And I started my professional career as the BBC correspondent in Moldova. So I'm a former journalist. I used to protest against censorship at our public company in Moldova. I used to march for access to information and demand access to public information. I used to sign petitions when journalists were attacked, including physically. I used to write reports, counter reports for the Freedom House, worked at the Independent Journalism Center. So for me, of course, back then, freedom of expression was an absolute right, absolute, I mean, a non-negotiable right. And then I found myself in a situation when I am chairing the newsroom at the public company, and I have to take editorial decisions. And I realize that there are boundaries, that the freedom of expression actually comes with an intrinsic responsibility. But to whom is this responsibility? To whom does it extend, and what type of responsibility? I would say, first, it's to the people. It's to the people whose rights are abused. It's to the people who cannot find justice in corrupt courts. It's to people who find in journalists the last resort that liability will prevail. Personally, I think that our biggest problems in our societies is impunity, because impunity erodes trust of people in state institutions. So, and it's also a responsibility to find a balance between various rights, because sometimes the right to access to information can conflict with the right to personal life. Sometimes the right to opinion can conflict with the right to not be discriminated, to not be subject of hate speech and discrimination. So where does your right to an opinion start and begins and ends? And where is my right not to be discriminated because I'm a woman, or not to be discriminated because I'm a journalist, a woman, not to be subject to a smear campaign in online? So how do we navigate all this? And I have a few personal takeaways that I'd like to share. And the first and most important is that we always have to follow best practices, international standards. We all know about the triple test, yes? The necessity, the legality, the proportionality. I mentioned already the Ofcom example when they said it was necessary and it was proportionate. We have to ensure that there's a due, transparent process in place. When there is transparent process, people tend to trust. And I also have one, better over-communicate than leave room for suspicion. Quite often, the lack of communication leads to suspicion. So it's not necessarily about the decision, but it's about how this decision was conveyed. Be mindful of the precedents you create, because today you might be acting in good faith. I consider that my colleagues and we act in good faith in Moldova when regulating TV and radio. But what if the same precedents are used by a bad intended composition or members of the new council? So precedents are very important, and due process in place. Ensure that the reasons related to national security are actually genuine and valid, because we all know, and I share the reluctance to use national security when it comes to media freedoms, because we know that this is the front that the authoritarian regimes are using when basically restricting the activity of media and civic activists. Yeah. So how do we make sure that national security is about national security? Who takes the decision? This was discussed yesterday in the beginning. Who decides what's disinformation and what's not? Who decides what's hate speech and what's not? Definitely not the government, definitely not the state. Therefore, you need to create independent regulatory authorities. You need to ensure these authorities are strong. You need to ensure that they are accountable to the public and that there is a solid public trust, because if there is not trust in state institutions, in these regulatory institutions, then of course you get the social cohesion is weakened. And the next takeaway is precisely linked to the social cohesion. When we have dividing lines, it's easier to manipulate. It's easier to exploit the fears. It's easier to exploit those dividing lines, be it on ideological or geopolitical, ethnic, language, whatever, societal lines. So social cohesion means that for a foreign malign influence will be harder to basically succeed. How do we ensure this social resilience? Of course, we spoke about media literacy. It was we just spoke about it, the education and culture. And I was a month ago. I was in Oslo at the meeting of all the European regulatory authorities, and the head of the Norwegian authority, she shared that they are not concerned at all that young people are on TikTok because they use editorially controlled content. They are not scared about foreign activities or some other countries, precisely because their people read newspapers. More than 80% of people read newspapers. More than 80% of people are aware, are highly literate. So this is why I think I cannot stress enough, and we've been stressing enough, we've been stressing these days, the literacy. Explain the importance of consuming editorially controlled content. Right? Know who the owner is, know who the editor of that information is, who gives you this, who serves you on the plate this information. And what do we do in general? Fact-checking, it works, but there are limitations to fact-checking, right? Because again, the abundance of disinformation is so huge. At the same time, we see that there's news avoidance. The Reuters Center for Study of Journalism just published recently, I think a week ago, its digital trends report, and they saw alerted that there's news avoidance among young people. So what do we do about it? We use explanatory and solution journalism. People don't want to get scared. They don't want to read bad news and leave it out there. We have to go beyond that. We have to offer solutions. We have to make them feel comfortable and optimistic about tomorrow, right? I mean, we all need that. And stay true to your beliefs and values. At the end of the day, I mean, for me, when I have to take a decision whether to sanction a TV station or a radio station, I ask myself all the time, okay, is this good journalism or bad journalism? If I'd be at the BBC, would my editor approve this type of news or not? Would I be sanctioned by my own colleagues internally for, is this good journalism or bad journalism? So stay true to your beliefs and values. And do not give up. Keep building democracy every minute of every day. We shall not take democracy for granted. We've seen that democracy sometimes, even in old democracies, can die in darkness, can die when journalists do not provide the information that people need. So keep building democracy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Liliana. And I think you have really managed in a couple of minutes to talk about so many challenges that we have talked about, but also to bring your personal dilemmata and everyday experience into it. And I must say that I've really been taking away a lot, especially your last sentence, because we're not giving up when it comes to preserving democracy. Thank you so much for that. And ladies and gentlemen, this is bringing us to the end of our conference and to our closing session. And don't be afraid, I'm not gonna even try to summarize everything that has been discussed here, because I know that I wouldn't be doing justice to anything that has happened in these 1.5 days. But I would still like to try to summarize some of the main takeaways that I have personally taken from walking around in this conference in the last 1.5 days. Important things that I picked up or that I heard from you or from my colleagues, and would like to share those observations with you. And for me personally, the last 1.5 days have been really impressive and very valuable, because I could really see that it was not only the very engaging discussions that we had on the podium with the audience, but I could also see all the discussions that were happening outside in the corridors and during the coffee breaks. And I can only say that I'm so happy that we are back in personal contact and that we can really use this as a platform again to also build contacts and friendships that will then continue and allow us to continue our discussions beyond these 1.5 days. And this is definitely one of our main aims. We have also tried a new format, and this was also exciting for us, and we've been discussing this quite a lot in our team. Because we wanted to make this platform more engaging. And you see that we have had several parallel sessions. We brought masterclasses, workshops, and case studies here. And we would really very much value your feedback on that. And I know that you will all be going back to very, very busy daily routines, but if you could spare a couple of minutes, we will be sending you some questions. Anything that you would like to share with us, suggestions, remarks, constructive criticism, we'll be very happy, because we see this as a valuable platform that we don't only want to preserve, but that we want to develop. And it should be useful for all of you. Listening to the discussions, I think one thing that has been absolutely clear is that we are at the critical juncture when it comes to media freedom, and how crucial it really is to take the right turn, to take the right path, which has to be a path that is firmly rooted and based on human rights. But I also noted some remarks in the discussions that really struck me, and I think we shouldn't forget about that. It's also development and economic process that cannot, progress that cannot strive without media freedom. And I think this is something that we really need to bear in mind because we are talking about a really central topic here. A lot of the discussions were circling around, I think, one of the biggest concerns, and this is the paradigm shift due to technology and how it is changing the everyday work of you as journalists, editors, and people working in the media industry. And we see a lot of changes in the information sphere that are resulting from this paradigm shift, which is an oversaturation and misleading or manipulative information, which is eroding trust in the media and harming our societies. And we do need, for sure, renewed efforts to protect the role of journalism, to filter through all this noise that we are experiencing around the clock. And to prevent deception, and this was something that was discussed in the stage interview with the representative and Erika Marat, we have to look maybe at this concept of having a right to be free from deception. But at the same time, and I think I would like to add that to this thought, that it should not be an invitation for states to define the truth, which would lead us into other problems. It should rather be public interest that should be leading us when defining media freedom. And I think these were some of the main concepts that at least I was taking away from our initial discussions when we opened the conference. One of the recurring issues, and one point that I would really like to stress again, is that human rights and the public interest should and must be an intrinsic part of technology. And far too often, and we heard that from several speakers, this is an add-on somewhere in the process, but human rights expertise needs to be on the table, needs to be an integral part from the very start, from the development, of policies, of technology, and so on. Otherwise, we will have problems that we will continue to experience. We were talking a lot about information disorders, and I was personally really impressed by all the fact-checking initiatives that exist in the region, and thank you for your really insightful information that you shared with us, and also the cooperation that is already going on between countries, which I think was very interesting to debunk myths and fakes, which is really needed. But there's also, again, a thought that I would like to add to this, and I also heard it from somebody on the panel, that it is that we shouldn't forget that fact-checking initiatives should be complementary and cannot replace high-level journalistic work based on high ethical standards. And this is also something that we need to invest in. And unfortunately, and this might be a more difficult truth, there's no single solution to fix this. And I think this has also become clear. We really need a multi-layered approach, very comprehensive, involving various stakeholders. And in the end, the goal needs to be to build resilience in our societies, to be able to, again, deal with the information that we are confronted with. Another challenge that we noted was that also we are constantly lagging behind. Disinformation and technology always seems to be at least 2-3 steps ahead. And I think one of the answers that I picked up there, which gives me some hope, and maybe we really have to work on that, is we need more resources, we need more research, because sometimes it's not really clear yet what the challenges look like in detail when we look into the various countries and regions. But I also noted that we need more resources and support for journalists, as your role is becoming more and more complex, dealing with many more challenges than before. And we also need to invest in literacy, and we just heard it on our last panel, but literacy also in a very broad sense, journalists, media consumers, actually in the end, everyone in our societies. So yes, we are partly in a reactionary mode, and the same also goes for artificial intelligence, and we have devoted quite some time to discuss the impact that it has on freedom of expression. Maybe it's also time to really stop, pause, and think, as we, I think, need to know where we want to go. What is it that we want? What role do we want for media and technology to play in our societies in the future? I think this is one of the takeaways for us, to invest some more work in that. Transparency was also a recurring issue, and I think really important. But I think also important to note that it's a tool towards a goal, but not the end result. And this is also something that I think we will take with us for our future work. States do have a role to play, for sure. Regulation is important to give a framework, but it needs to be followed in the end and by independent regulators with sufficient expertise and resources, to not remain at the courtesy of big companies. And I would like to pick that up again, which brings me back to the strong and independent institutions that can foster the enabling environment for media freedom, because journalism needs to be shielded from targeted surveillance as it compromises the protection of sources. Then we also, a recurring issue that we discussed was the national security and anti-terrorism laws, where I think we all agree they need to be narrowly defined and comply with international standards. One of the big questions that I think I cannot answer here now, but we'll probably have to discuss it as well, is the question of what should be regulated, what should be self-regulated, especially when tackling hate speech. We've also, speaking about hate speech, seen that laws are still oftentimes very arbitrary, partly intentional, maybe partly unintentional, but this is really having an impact, and we need clearer and more narrow definitions when it comes to hate speech. We already see a growing use of such laws to stifle media freedom, and that's why I really think that in addition to regulation, we also need to have this continued dialogue, a dialogue that involves judges, that involves journalists, to create a better understanding on how to proceed. And I think that also important here is we shouldn't leave this topic entirely to law and legislation, to the judiciary, but we really again have to engage a whole range of actors, including civil society, media, journalists, but also those who are affected by hate speech, because in the end, it is about a better understanding, and it is about a climate of trust that we need if we want to be successful in tackling this. Another issue that really struck me was the pervasiveness of misogyny. And we've heard that in our discussions around the safety of journalists, especially in some parts of the region, when we talk about the online sphere. And yes, anonymity plays a role in all of this, but I also don't think that drawing the curtain away will entirely solve the problem. And I think we've also seen the dangers of online violence going offline and the impact that this can have on mental health of journalists, especially women, but also their families and everybody in their environment. One of the solutions, if we want to be successful, definitely is intersectionality, and we have discussed this, and we will also continue to work on it, because it's not only sometimes being a female journalist, but we also see many overlaps coming from a certain minority or from another ethnic group. All of this compiled can have an even stronger impact. And one thing is really clear: any attack on a journalist is an attack on society. Because when journalists are not safe, this will lead to self-censorship, and it will leave us without certain stories being told, being discussed in our society, and there we end up with a serious challenge to our democracy. This is where I would like to end, and I said I don't want to even try to summarize all the discussions, but these were some of the takeaways that I'm certainly taking away with me. If things that you raised in the discussions were not part of this, please be sure we took note of everything, as this will be an important basis for our further work as we develop guidance, toolboxes that we will be sharing with you very soon. I would like to stop here and would like to invite the representative on freedom of the media, Ms. Ribeiro, to the stage to deliver her closing remarks.
So, dear friends, first of all, a big thank you to all of you. It has been a real pleasure to be here with you in Bishkek for these last 2 days. Let me once again thank the Kyrgyz authorities for their invitation to host this year's Central Asia Media Conference in the country's capital. Then I would like to express my sincere thanks to all of you again for devoting your time and your efforts and your dedication to this event, and for participating in very vibrant and dynamic discussions on a range of highly relevant issues affecting media freedom in the region. Be sure that, the director of the RFOM, of my office, was clear regarding all the takeaways, but every other comments, ideas, experiences that were discussed in these 2 last days will be taken into consideration by our work in the future. My sincere thanks also goes to the moderators and panelists for sharing their invaluable knowledge and experience in our 2 days of fruitful discussions and expert interactions. This event would not have been possible without all of your engagement. Throughout these 2 days, we have heard during the many discussions and debates about some very important initiatives to enhance media freedom in this region. I want to commend all the efforts that media, civil society, and other international organizations and the OSCE field missions have invested so far in enhancing the environment for media in the region. In particular, I welcome the launching of the first Central Asian network of media ethics councils announced earlier today. I extend my warm congratulations to all colleagues and wish the network a productive work ahead. However, despite the many positive initiatives, media freedom is far from secured, and journalists are far from feeling safe and protected in doing their jobs. It cannot be overstated that safety of journalists, which entails physical, digital, economic, legal, and psychological safety, is and remains a precondition for media freedom. Without this, there can be no quality and independent journalism, nor can there be a lasting and well-functioning democracy. Unfortunately, we see public trust declining in media's watchdog function, coupled with the growing anti-media sentiment, a development largely fueled by populist leaders and politicians, and further exacerbated by spread of disinformation, hate speech, and propaganda, and further accelerated by digital technologies. This is an extremely worrying trend for media freedom, for public interest journalism, and for our democratic societies. This sad reality is not only happening in Central Asia, but it's also palpable in too many parts of the OSCE region. This sad reality merits an urgent and collective response by all relevant stakeholders for the sake of safeguarding media freedom, to protect democracy and our fundamental human rights. To achieve this, we need strong political will and renewed commitment to media freedom. By creating a little over 25 years ago the mandate that I proudly serve, the OSCE participating states entrusted the representative on freedom of the media to advocate and promote in their region full compliance with OSCE principles and commitments regarding media freedom. They also agreed voluntarily to provide the institution with a rapid response mechanism regarding serious non-compliance with these principles and commitments. They understood that the free flow of information is a crucial element of building resilient societies and promoting mutual understanding between countries. That is a unique mandate, and it is therefore the responsibility of the participating states to ensure its continued functioning. This means nothing less and nothing more that is their responsibility to work towards turning the tide on the backsliding of democracy, on the regression of media freedom, and on the crumbling of our joint principles and commitments. The future of media freedom and of comprehensive security in the OSCE region depends on the sense of shared responsibility of the authorities of the participating states. A shared responsibility toward the implementation of their commitments and toward supporting and strengthening this independent institution. Such a shared responsibility, however, rests not on the shoulders of politicians and government authorities alone. This shared responsibility also includes you. We need you, journalists and other media workers, civil society, academia, media organizations, and all others to do your part. To do your work in a diligent manner, to be critical to the outside world, but also to your own functioning, to inform and educate people to come together and debate with an open mind and a willingness to take steps forward. This is exactly what we have been doing in the past 2 days, and I thank you for that. We are at the crossroads in time, and we have already discussed this issue. Let us not stall and stand still. Let us move forward to guarantee that media freedom can safeguard our democracies for future generations. Before I conclude, I would like to thank my colleagues in the office who pulled all of this together in ensuring a smooth running conference from start to end. I would also like to convey my special thanks to the OSCE Program Office in Bishkek and the OSCE presences in the region for their tireless and valuable support in making this conference a success. The interpreters and technical support staff deserve my thanks for making it possible to understand each other across various countries, regions, and languages. I very much look forward to continuing our dialogue and partnership with both authorities, as well as media and civil society in the region, so with you, with the aim to strengthen media freedom in the region. To this end, I will continue to offer assistance to ongoing reform processes and will gladly look into any requests to provide expert advice. This conference has provided my office and me with very valuable insights, perspectives, and new and renewed personal contacts, which we will use to continue our structured exchange of ideas and network in this important part of our OSCE region, all in support of our common aim to enhance media freedom and hence our societies. I thank you for your attention. I wish you all the best and continued success in your important work, and please continue being attached to your values and beliefs. Thank you very much.